We've been able to think. We've wondered, what exactly is this thing doing the thinking? Consciousness. It feels like this giant, unsolvable mystery, right? But what if it's not a mystery at all? What if it's a blueprint?
What if I told you the secret to our incredibly rich inner life isn't about what our brain manages to absorb, but actually what it chooses to ignore? What if consciousness is just the process of getting really, really good at throwing almost everything away?
All right, so let's start with the big one, the age-old problem that scientists and philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries, the consciousness puzzle. Think about it. The world is bombarding you right now with an absolutely insane amount of data. Light waves, sound waves, temperatures, textures. It's chaotic and overwhelmingly complex. And yet what you experience is simple, a unified, clear reality. You see a red apple. You feel a warm mug. You recognize a friend's face. How on earth does your brain pull off that magic trick?
Well, a new scientific framework has a pretty radical answer. It says the brain isn't doing magic. It's doing something more like triage. It's not trying to build a perfect, high-definition replica of reality. It's building a version that's just good enough to get by.
So on one side, you have physical reality, this just almost infinite ocean of information. And on the other side, you have your conscious experience, which is more like a simple, low-res, but incredibly useful postcard from that ocean. This new theory says that consciousness isn't about mirroring reality perfectly, it's the process of creating that postcard summary. It lives right there, in the gap between the two.
Okay, so the official name for this is accepted representational reduction. I know, it's a mouthful, but let's just focus on the two words that really matter here, reduction and accepted. First, the brain dramatically reduces all that incoming data. And then, and this is the part that changes everything, it makes a decision to accept that simplified summary as if it were the real thing.
Let's make this real. Take the feeling of warmth. For a physicist, that's trillions upon trillions of molecules all vibrating at different speeds, something a supercomputer would struggle to model. But your brain, it just goes, let's call it warm. It creates a simple little mental object. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to tell you to pull your hand away from the stove. Your brain accepts the simple object, warm, and just moves on.
So, how does this acceptance thing actually work? Because this isn't just some vague philosophical idea. The researchers actually lay out a very concrete, repeatable four-step cycle that they believe is the very engine of consciousness itself. It all kicks off with step 1, reduce. Faced with that ocean of data, your brain has to throw almost all of it overboard. This isn't really a choice, it's a mathematical necessity. No finite system, not even your brain, can process everything at once. To even start to function, you have to filter the noise. Next up is step 2, bind. The little bit of information that actually makes the cut doesn't just stay as a fleeting signal. It gets packaged up, stabilized, and turned into a reusable internal object. This is what turns a pattern of light into the concept of apple, or a set of sound frequencies into my friend's voice.
And right here, this is it. This is the moment where the magic happens. Step 3, accept. This is the game changer. The system makes a judgment call. It decides, you know what, this simplified little object is good enough for what I need to do right now. And crucially, it stops processing. Just think about that for a second. It could keep crunching the numbers, get a slightly more accurate model of that apple, a more precise reading of the temperature. But it doesn't. Why? Because survival in the real world isn't about perfection. It's about being fast enough. This isn't just a reaction, like a thermostat clicking on. It's a high-stakes bet. The brain is betting that this good enough model is all it needs to navigate the world. And that bet, that active decision to say, this is real enough for me, that is where consciousness is born.
And finally, after that bet is made, we get to step 4, use. Once it's accepted, that simple object becomes the actual currency of your thoughts. It's the thing you remember, the thing you use to predict the future, and the thing you act on. For all intents and purposes, it is your reality.
So let's just hammer this point home, because it's everything. According to this framework, consciousness is not the complex number crunching in the background. Consciousness is that moment of acceptance, that critical point where the system decides a cheap, simplified model is good enough to be treated as real.
Now, if consciousness is a specific, repeatable process, well, you can see where this is going, right? It has some absolutely staggering implications. It means we might actually be able to build it.
And the authors of this paper, they don't dance around this at all. This quote from their work just lays it bare. They're not just describing what's happening inside our skulls. They believe they are providing a literal blueprint for building an artificial consciousness.
So let's be perfectly clear about what we're talking about here. This isn't just a theory anymore. This is a recipe.
It's a set of instructions. To build a system with what they call perceived consciousness, you have to design it to do these specific things. It has to reduce complexity, bind that info to a stable object, accept that object once it's good enough, and plug it into a bigger model of the world.
But here's the final critical ingredient. You have to link the very act of acceptance to some kind of internal reward-like state. That aha moment, that little feeling of satisfaction when you get it, that's not just a nice side effect, it's a core part of the engine.
So, where does all this leave us? What does it actually mean to be holding a potential blueprint for one of nature's biggest secrets?
Well, what it means is that the entire conversation gets to change. For maybe the first time ever, we can drag the question of consciousness out of the philosophy department and into the engineering lab. It's no longer just an abstract debate, it becomes a testable engineering problem. Something we can actually build and test and watch fail and try to fix. We can follow the recipe and see what comes out of the oven.
And that leaves us with one last, huge, unavoidable question. If we take this recipe and we gather all the ingredients and we follow the blueprint step by step, what exactly is going to wake up?